Welcome to Story to Go, where every story takes you somewhere new. But tonight, we're going somewhere dark. Some things are buried for a reason. Some secrets should never be touched, and some dead things are not truly dead. This is the story of a cursed hand, a foolish joke, and a man who did not understand that when he took something from the grave, something from the grave would come back for him. Listen carefully and never laugh at the dead, because some of them may hear you. One evening, about 8 months ago, I was sitting with some old college friends in the room of our friend Louis. We were drinking punch, smoking, laughing, talking about books, art, and foolish things, the way young men often do. Then suddenly, the door flew open, and one of my closest childhood friends, Pierre, rushed into the room like a storm. "Guess where I have come from?" Everyone began joking. One said he had come from a dance hall. Another said he had come from borrowing money. A third laughed and said he had smelled the punch from outside and had come to drink with us. But Pierre shook his head. "You are all wrong," he said. "I have just returned from Normandy, and I have brought with me one of my friends." Then he reached into his pocket, and slowly he pulled out a human hand. It was long, black, dried, shriveled. The skin had been stripped away. The hand had been cut off at the wrist. Its yellow nails still clung to the fingers. It was horrible to look at. Pierre smiled as if he had shown us something amusing. He told us that the hand had belonged to a great criminal, a man who had murdered his wife, hanged a priest, robbed travelers, and committed terrible crimes before he was finally executed. The hand had been kept for years by an old sorcerer in Normandy, and when that sorcerer died, his possessions were sold. Pierre had bought the hand. "What are you going to do with that horrible thing?" we asked him. Pierre laughed. "I will use it as the handle for my doorbell," he said. "It will frighten my creditors." Some of us laughed, but one medical student, drunk but serious, looked at Pierre and said, "My friend, you should bury that hand. Give it Christian burial, because its owner may come back one day to demand it." Pierre raised his glass toward the dead hand. "I drink," he said, "to the next visit of your master." We all laughed, but none of us knew that the joke had already gone too far. The next day, I passed by Pierre's room. I found him reading and smoking, completely calm. "How are you?" I asked. "Very well," he replied. "And the hand?" Pierre smiled. "Did you not see it? I hung it on the bell pull last night." Then he told me something strange. Around midnight, someone had rung his bell violently. Pierre had asked who was there, but no one answered, so he went back to bed. At that moment, the landlord entered the room. He was angry. "Sir, remove that disgusting thing from your door at once, or I will ask you to leave this house." Pierre answered with complete seriousness, "Sir, you insult a hand that does not deserve it. It belonged to a man of high breeding." The landlord left without another word. Pierre then removed the hand from the outer bell pull and tied it to the bell cord inside his room near his bed. That night, I slept badly. I felt nervous, restless, afraid without knowing why. Several times I woke suddenly. Once, I even imagined that someone had entered my room. I got up, I searched the closets, I looked under the bed, but no one was there. At last, near 6 in the morning, I began to fall asleep. Then, a violent knocking came at my door. I jumped from my bed. It was Pierre's servant. He was pale, half-dressed, trembling. "Sir, my poor master! Someone has murdered him!" I dressed quickly and ran to Pierre's apartment. The house was full of people. Everyone was talking at once. Neighbors, police, doctors. Fear was everywhere. With difficulty, I reached Pierre's bedroom, and there I saw him. He was lying on his bed. He was not dead, but his face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. His eyes were wide open, his pupils were huge. It was as if he were still staring at something horrible, something invisible to everyone else. His fists were clenched. I lifted the quilt from his body, and then I saw it. On his neck, deep in the flesh, were the marks of fingers, 5 terrible marks, as if a hand of incredible strength had tried to strangle him. Drops of blood stained his shirt. And then I noticed something else. The dried hand was gone. It was no longer attached to the bell cord. No one knew where it had disappeared. The next day, the newspapers reported the crime. They wrote that Pierre had returned home at 10 o'clock at night. He had dismissed his servant and gone to bed. Around midnight, the servant was awakened by the furious ringing of his master's bell. The bell rang once, then stopped, then rang again with such violence that the servant became terrified. He called the concierge. The police were summoned, and when they forced open the door, they found Pierre lying on the floor. The furniture was overturned. The room showed signs of a terrible struggle. And on Pierre's neck were the deep marks of 5 fingers. The doctor said the attacker must have had extraordinary strength and an extremely thin, bony hand. But no attacker was found. No motive was discovered. No clue remained. Only one thing was missing: the flayed hand. Pierre survived, but his mind did not. He had gone mad. For 7 months, I visited him every day in the hospital, but he never returned to himself. He spoke strange words. He trembled at shadows. He believed that something was always following him, something dead, something angry, something waiting. Then one day, they called me in haste. Pierre was dying. When I arrived, he was calm. For 2 hours, he lay quietly. Then, suddenly, he rose from his bed with terrible strength. His eyes filled with horror. He waved his arms in the air as if fighting something no one could see. "Take it away! Take it away! It is strangling me! Help! Help!" He ran around the room twice, screaming. Then he fell face down on the floor, dead. Pierre had no parents living, so I was asked to take his body back to his village in Normandy, the same village from which he had returned the night he showed us the hand. 4 days later, I walked beside the old priest through the little cemetery where Pierre's parents were buried. It was a beautiful day. The sky was clear. The sun shone brightly. Birds sang in the bushes. And for a moment, I remembered Pierre as a child. I remembered us sneaking through those same blackberry bushes, eating the fruit until our lips were stained black. But then, the grave diggers called out. They had found another coffin beneath the soil. A blow from the pickaxe had broken the lid. Inside lay a skeleton of unusual size. Its empty eyes seemed to stare at us, as if still full of hatred. Then one of the gravediggers cried, "Look, one of his hands has been cut off at the wrist." And beside the skeleton, he picked up a huge, dried, withered hand. The priest became serious. "Leave the dead in peace," he said. "Close the coffin. We will make poor Pierre's grave somewhere else." The next day, Pierre was buried. Before I left Normandy, I gave money to the old priest, so that prayers would be said for the soul of the man whose grave we had disturbed. And from that day on, I never laughed at the dead again, because some things buried in the earth do not forgive being brought back. And so ends the story of the flayed hand, a story of curiosity, mockery, and a terrible mistake. Pierre thought he had bought a strange object, a dead thing, a joke to frighten others. But some things do not belong to the living. Some graves should stay closed. Some warnings should be heard. And some hands should never be touched. Thank you for listening to Story to Go. If this story sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Because another tale is waiting. And next time, it may be even closer than you think.